Greetings, everyone. It is 3 o'clock. I just want to say welcome to those who are joining us and those who continue to join us. It is 3 o'clock, August 6, 2024, Eastern Standard Time. So greetings and thank you all for joining us for today's webinar on navigating the federal application process with HHS careers. With the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, this information session will provide a general overview of our department by highlighting our process, navigating USAJOBS, understanding vacancy announcement sections, and tips on federal resume writing. So before we begin, we have a few housekeeping rules. This event is being recorded, and a PDF copy of the slides and the recording will be distributed following the event. If you need closed captioning, you can manually turn on the feature using the closed captioning button at the bottom of your screen. This session is designated to promote overall awareness about who we are and how to navigate the federal application process. So please keep in mind that we are only asking that you submit relevant questions in the question and answer box, and our team will work diligently to answer them at the end, towards the end of the presentation. So the goal is to kindly refrain from submitting HR-related job application status updates and inquiries. For such questions, please contact the office listed at the bottom of the job announcement on your USAJOBS account. Without further ado, let's begin our presentation. So I'll be facilitating today's event. My name is Nerly Burtis Chiriowa, and I am the HHS Corporate Recruitment Program Officer. I have over 10 years of human resources and recruitment experience within the federal government and private sector. I will serve as a subject matter expert, helping you not only navigate USAJOBS, but also know how to create and tailor your federal resume. I have my colleague joining me today, Drew Sullivan, who is our public affairs specialist. He will be assisting with the question and answer moderator section. So overall, here's an overview of the topics that will be presented during today's information session. I will highlight HHS's mission, our 27 agencies, provide an overview of the federal application process, tips on how to navigate the USAJOBS, followed by a live demo. I will also go over tips and tricks for the federal resume writing and answer a few of your questions as time permits. So I will be playing a short video just to introduce HHS.
The Department of Health and Human Services is many things. We are more than 80,000 employees in more than 2,000 locations across the country and around the world. We're some of the world's finest scientists, physicians, researchers, and public servants. We're a big, busy, dedicated team, yet all of us share one thing in common: our mission to enhance and protect the health and well-being of all Americans. Our mission means reforming, strengthening, and modernizing America's healthcare system by keeping the patient at the center. Our mission means protecting the health of Americans where they live, work, and play from infectious disease, from addiction, and so many other threats. Our mission means strengthening the economic and social well-being of all Americans of every age. Our mission means fostering sound, sustained advances in the sciences to help Americans live longer, healthier lives. With energy, dedication, and focus, we, the men and women of HHS, are committed to fulfilling our mission of serving the American people.
Produced by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
So as you all can see, HHS is a robust organization with several agencies and offices throughout the United States of America. So overall, the mission of HHS is to enhance the health and well-being of all Americans. I know that you all have been hearing me say HHS, HHS. So the Department of Health and Human Services acronym is HHS. And the goal is that, especially throughout this webinar, for us to give you tips and tricks to be able to identify the department and be able to pinpoint specific offices and agencies that we have. So HHS has 12 operating divisions, which we did recently add an additional one. But for the purposes of today, the department has 12 operating divisions or agencies that include the following listed on this page. You most likely have heard of Centers for Disease Control, CDC, Food and Drug Administration, FDA, and the National Institute of Health, NIH, to just name a few. And we have over 16 staff divisions, and we also have one uniformed services. So overall, we have the Office of Assistant Secretary for Administration, we have the Assistant Secretary for Public Affairs, and then we also have, to name a few, the Office of Medicare Hearing and Appeals, and then as well as we stated, the U.S. Public Health Services, which is our USPHS Commission Corps. So with the federal application process, here's a brief overview of the federal application process. So logging on to USAJOBS is usually the first step in this process. So creating an account and identifying your vacancy announcement to apply for. So with USAJOBS, we're going to kind of go through and give more detailed information, but just a brief overview of how an application process will look like. It's important to review the entire announcement as well as the assessment questionnaire. Once you have all of your required documents, you're ready to submit your application. Use the resume builder tool in the USA Job or upload your federal resume. Remember to make sure to make your resume searchable. Upload your required documents, which are limited but to include your unofficial transcript, SF50, DD214 for those who are veterans, Schedule A, your documented disability. And then once you have submit, which is the third step, now you wait for your application to be reviewed, rated. This includes your assessment questionnaire, qualification, review, and eligibility determined by an HR specialist. After the conclusion of your submission, you may receive the following notification regarding your application, which are the application status. So this is called your notice of results. So basically, first you receive your application was received. You have a tentative and you're tentatively eligible based on your self-assessment. And as we kind of go through, we'll explain when it comes to self-assessment what that means. Then you receive your eligibility verified by an HR specialist. So a human being will go through and review all of your qualifications, everything that you submitted within your application, and will deem you verified or eligible or non-eligible based on the verification of your material. And then it will basically communicate that application referred to the hiring manager. Once your application is referred to the hiring manager, at that point, you are now ready for the possibility of being interviewed. So then there is a request to schedule for an interview. If you receive a tentative job offer, that is when you enter into the fourth step. You'll begin the preliminary security screening, followed by your official job offer with your start date. And we recommend that you do not notify your employer until you receive your official job offer, which is the final offer within the process of this specific hiring process. So overall, this is just a brief overview of it. We will go into greater detail as we go through the documents, as we go through the presentation. But for now, I'll do a brief presentation of overview of the application. So basically for this, the application hiring video, this is just a brief video to go over the preliminary steps for using the platform. A link to the video is going to be shared, and training videos are available on USA Jobs and can be found on YouTube under OPM's YouTube channel. So the overall goal is to just make sure that you all are aware of all of the shared resources that do exist on all platforms, specifically since OPM and as well as HHS Careers tries to provide as much information as possible for applicants that are interested in working at HHS. So take time to look at this video. Thank you.
There's nothing more powerful than you, making your thing happen, really going for it.
This video will cover, at a high level, the federal application and hiring process, as well as USA Jobs and hiring agencies' roles. USA Jobs connects job seekers with federal employment opportunities across the United States and around the world. Federal agencies post job announcements on USA Jobs. You can search USA Jobs, then apply directly with agencies. The process starts when you create an account with login.gov and USA Jobs. Once your account is created, you need to complete a profile. With a USA Jobs profile, you can save jobs, automate job searches, and manage everything you need to complete your application, including resumes and required documents. Once you complete the required information in your profile and have developed or uploaded a resume, you can search and apply to posted jobs. When you find a job of interest, read the entire announcement to determine if you're eligible and meet the qualifications. Pay particular attention to the How to Apply section of the job announcement before starting your application. As you explore opportunities, take a moment to make your resume and profile searchable by federal hiring managers. Select Apply, and we'll walk you through a 6-step process where you'll attach a resume and any required documents. When your application is ready, you'll leave USA Jobs and go to the hiring agency's system to submit your application. The agency may require additional steps, including more personal information and/or documentation. After you submit your application, go back to the Applications tab on the USA Jobs home dashboard in your profile and make sure the hiring agency received your application. If you submitted your application successfully, your application status will indicate you applied and display the date you submitted your application. You can always check the status of your application in your USA Jobs profile with the Track This Application link. The status of your application will be updated by the agency. The hiring agency will review applications once the job announcement closes. The hiring agency will review your application to determine if you will be asked to complete additional employment assessments. Agencies use employment assessments to determine whether a candidate has the skills, experience, or knowledge to succeed in the job. After the agency completes all interviews and other assessments, they may contact a candidate with a tentative job offer. Once the offer is accepted, the agency will start the background investigation. The hiring process is complete when the agency successfully completes the background investigation and any additional security checks and sets the start date for the selected candidate. The agency will also send out a notification to the remaining candidates that a selection was made. Learn more by visiting the USA Jobs Help Center.
This
So thank you all so much for watching that video. So now that we have gone over a brief overview of how to create an account and how to look for vacancies, it is important to note that USA Job is the online platform for all federal vacancies. It is the primary system for managing application materials, which include resumes, cover letters, transcripts, and additional supporting documents such as the SF-50 for current federal employees, DD-214 for veterans, disability documents for Schedule A, and so many other documents that are able to be uploaded within this platform. We highly encourage you to go online, create your profile, build or upload up to 5 resumes. It is important to at least make one of them searchable as stated in the video, so hiring managers can find you if they are searching for your resumes. That is a new tool that is being more and more advertised within OPM and throughout the federal government, where there are a lot of supervisors and managers and hiring managers that are going into USA Jobs to look at individual resumes that individuals have made searchable. So that is a good tip for you all to be aware of. USA Jobs also has resources and additional information to help you on writing your resume and exploring hiring paths. So again, throughout USA Jobs, there are a lot of information that is included. So just kind of take time when you are applying for jobs, clicking on the information buttons that are included within the platform, because it does provide you with valuable information. So overall with this slide, this is an example of a vacancy announcement. This is an example of a recent graduate management analyst vacancy announcement within HHS, more specifically, as you guys can see, within the health and within the Health Resources and Services Administration, HRSA. In the next slide, we'll go over the key components to pay attention to. So as you all see here, where it states the recent graduate, which is the name of the position, then we have the Department of Health and Human Services, which is the department that we're in, and then HRSA, which is one of the one of the agencies that I listed before that are located within HHS. So those are kind of some key things to look at when you're looking at vacancy announcement, just kind of like as you're reading through, pinpoint certain things, because throughout each of the announcements that are posted, they're very clear with communicating each individual areas within it. So now just wanted to make sure to present the visual just so you all could see where it's located. So now, as stated with here, understanding a vacancy announcement is very important in order to be a successful and competitive candidate. Here are the specific sections posted in each vacancy announcement you want to make sure that you are paying attention to, which includes the job title. It includes the agency and specific programs and division. Within the summary, position summary, and who can apply. Within the overview, open application period, grade and salary, location. Within the duties, description of the expected competencies. With the requirements, conditions, qualification, it includes specialized experience, education, additional information that may be listed for the specific organization, and then as well as assessment questions. So when it comes to how you'll be evaluated, please focus on the core competencies because it will show you what are the KSIs that each individual office is looking for, and then as well as the list of the required documents in order to be eligible. So overall, it will also provide you a list of how to apply with instructions and agency's contact information, and then as well as they make sure to list the fair and transparent, so any EEO policies, and then they also provide you with the contact information for reasonable accommodations. So it's important to note that agency's contact information is bolded because if you submit an application, you have questions for the specific vacancy, the contact information is there for you to follow up. So please keep that in mind. You generally want to wait 4 to 6 weeks after a vacancy announcement has closed before you reach out, just to give them proper time to sort through candidates. Each vacancy announcement sometimes gets up to 100 to 200 applications per announcement. So it just takes some time for a physical person, which is the HR specialist, to go through all the application material and to move forward and determine who is qualified or not. So when it comes to the general schedule, the federal government uses a general schedule pay scale to basically calculate each of the different positions and their role and how they are being paid. So overall, there are grade levels within the federal government. So there are grade level qualifications based on education. The general schedule is the predominant federal pay scale. OPM, if you Google OPM, GS pay scale, OPM pay scales, it will provide you with a lot of information regarding this specific area. And the one key thing that a lot of individuals are not aware of, a lot of this information is open to the public because this is the federal government. So there isn't anything that isn't shared within the federal government that isn't open for the general public to see. So anything can be searched on Google, anything can be searched on OPM pay scale, OPM grade, OPM basically incentives. So just take your time as you're going through the application process to search things through, Google things, read as much information as you can because it would help with the process. So the system has 15 grades starting at a GS1 and going up to a GS15. There are also 10 steps within each grade. Here's a brief summary of the grade levels and technical competencies required. So for a GS3 or a GS4, typically it includes internships for bachelor students, student jobs, or lower level administrative work. For a GS5 to a GS7, it includes mostly entry level and administrative positions. For a GS8 to GS12, most mid-level technical and even some first-level supervisory positions. So with the GS13 to a GS15 includes most top-level technical and supervisory positions. So this is something to take note when you are looking for roles. where do I fit in within the realm when I'm looking for a position? This is just some quick tips and tricks so that if you are entry level person and you are looking for a position, looking through and deciding based on your experience, which grade level would fit your experience level and your educational background. So as I stated, educational. So the grade level qualifications, this is a chart that outlines the GS grade level based on education for majority of the individuals attending today's call. Take notice, a GS4 is for a 2-year college student applying for internships, or a GS7 for a first-year master's student applying for summer internships. For college graduates, you're eligible for a GS5 after you complete your degree, or a GS7 if you finished with a GPA of a 3.0 or higher. Again, this is based off of the educational requirements for specific positions that are posted. It is not all positions. That is why originally there was just a generic grade level explanation, right? So now we're focusing solely on those who have an educational requirement. So following a master's degree, you're eligible for a GS9, a GS11 with a PhD. Past the GS11 level, you cannot substitute education for your experience. So keep that in mind when you're applying and looking through and seeing your education, because a lot of individuals may think, hey, I have a PhD, I should qualify for a 14 or a 13. However, please note, as stated, there are no substitutions past AGS 11. So it's important to read the specific text outline in the job vacancy announcement in order to determine if you are eligible based on educational requirement. It is also important to note that some vacancies within the federal government evaluate candidates' qualification based on education. However, there are many roles that do not require an education and qualify individuals solely based on experience. So those who have an educational background, you do have positions that can warrant that. And then those who just have based on work experience, you do have the opportunity for being qualified for those roles as well. So qualifications. So this is the basic and minimum qualifications. Here's an example of a vacancy announcement providing basic qualifications for a GS 601. So within the federal government, we have a lot of different classifications. We did host a webinar in March, that did communicate sort of series and how the federal government classifies positions. So a 601 health scientist position is a classification that the federal government can use. And for this specific role, this is a 601 health scientist position at the GS11 grade. You'll notice a required field of study in specialized experience at or equivalent to a GS9 level, or a PhD in a relevant field, or a combination of experience and education. So if you notice where it's bolded, right, those are basically sort of the key points that when you're looking at a vacancy announcement, you want to just focus on. So for this particular position, there are 3 different ways that someone can be qualified for this role, okay? And one being have a combine of specialized experience and graduate level education that meets 100% of the qualifications requirements for this position. So this is just highlighting a few things that you just want to take note when reviewing the vacancy announcement. So minimum qualifications continued. So for this postings, the minimum qualifications for a GS13 position are for applicants to possess at least 1 year of specialized experience, equivalent to at least a GS12 grade level, right? So if you notice here, when you are looking at your qualifications, always look at the grade that you're applying for. So for this specific example, the GS13, you have to at least have experience in a GS12. If you're interested in a GS14, you actually have to have at least experience in a GS13, right? So just take note of that. So a specialized experience is highlighted. So including experience planning, conducting, and analyzing scientific studies or surveys related to public health programs, right? And then for the GS14, you must possess at least 1 year of specialized experience equivalent to at least the GS13 grade level. You notice the slight variations in the highlighted text demonstrates a higher technical mastery of duties you will be expected to perform. So one stated including experience planning, conducting, and analyzing. The other one stated including experience providing scientific leadership in formulating, developing, implementing, and evaluating studies or surveys related to public health programs. So taking note in those variances in communication when it comes to how they communicate the duties performed, so that when you are working on your resume and you are trying to emphasize the skill sets and your experience in a specific role, you know that there is a certain level that is being communicated of expertise. And we'll go in this a little bit more as we go through. So overall, we're going to go through and look at the specialized experience in more detail. So recommendation, specialized experience. Specialized experience is a specific skill set that equips the applicant with the knowledge, skills, and abilities. We talked about KSAs a little bit earlier to perform successfully the duties of the position. And this is typically in or related to the work of the position to be filled, to be credible. Specialized experience must have been equivalent for at least 1 year. Okay. So we'll talk about that a little bit more. Next to the lower grade level in the normal line of GS level. So as we looked before, right, we looked at different grade levels and it states that must have experience in the grade before the one that you're trying to be qualified for, right? So if I'm interested in applying for GS 13, I have to have at least 1 year of experience at a GS 12 to be qualified. Okay. And please note the 52 weeks. It is very, very important. So if you do not mention the highlighted specialized experience in your resume, you will not be considered eligible for the position. You should not assume that an HR specialist will know that you are qualified for the position. Even though you have been doing the work for 5 years, you will need to explicitly tailor your resume, emphasizing the specialized experience stated in the vacancy announcement. So for this example, resume recommendation specialized experience. To qualify for professional development specialist at a GS 30113, you must meet the requirements listed below. So a GS 13, right? You would need GS 12 or equivalent for 1 year of experience. It states developing programs and policies related to professional development that addresses emergent issues or plan for innovation in the facets of an organization's work. Please do not copy and paste. Copying and pasting actually can grant you automatic removal from the process. If you look through vacancy announcement, it does communicate that. The goal is that you are being clear with how this specific responsibilities were done in your previous role and how you can massage and work them into it using the correct language to communicate that, right? So that is really the goal. It is not to copy and paste. Copy and pasting doesn't do you any justice. We do not use AI to kind of just quickly review resumes. There is a physical person that reads through your resume to deem you as qualified. So please take note of that. So overall, how you will be evaluated. This section highlights the core critical components of your job application. HR specialists and hiring managers will create a specific evaluation criteria. These competencies will be evaluated through your resume, questionnaire responses, interview, and other areas of the application process in order to judge and assess your competitiveness. The vacancy announcement goal is to provide information in advance so that you can know how to tailor your resume and also manage your expectations on how you are going to be evaluated. So this is another area within the vacancy announcement that gives you even further information. So as someone is reviewing your application, they're going to be seeing if you have a great written communication, if you are able to have oral communication. Maybe you can state that you had presentations that you've done. So there are several areas that they're looking at when they're trying to review a resume to see if you have the knowledge, skills, and abilities and other characteristics to do the role. So with the assessment questionnaire, there are several questions that are asked when completing a job application, and it varies based on the application. So please keep that in mind. But overall, here's an example of the assessment questionnaire to determine eligibility and qualification. Please answer these questions to the best of your ability. It is always recommended to click on the links within the questionnaire if you are not able to understand the eligibilities portion. I cannot stress this enough. I know that the verbiage can be a little bit sort of tongue-tied, especially for those who are current employees in the federal government, and then as well as those who are not. These are easy ways for people to mark themselves as disqualified. So it is really important for you all to be well versed in this. Read as much information as possible. As I stated, Google OPM. If you need to go through and just copy and paste it somewhere and basically ask to kind of like restate the question for you, I would highly suggest doing that because I know that this is an area where people tend to disqualify themselves fairly easily. So based on this example, you can see how education and the 1 year of specialized experience are being evaluated based on how the vacancy announcement was written. So as you notice here, it says I do not possess the education described, or it can say that I have a combination, right? Where it says number 2C, I have a combination of specialized level experience. So just sort of look through, read, making sure that you're able to understand exactly what you are responding to. If you state that you have a combination and an HR specialist reviews your resume and they take note that what you have on your resume does not necessarily match you stating a combination of experience, they can mark you as disqualified. So please note that anything that you do submit and answer within the questionnaire should be able to be shown through your resume, through your transcript and all of your supporting documents. So questionnaire here. Here's an example of the questions within the questionnaire used to evaluate your experience. As you notice, question 5 is requiring you to specify where in your resume the experience is documented. Okay. For questions that ask you to specify in your resume, make sure it is well documented and that you provide the information that they are requesting in the box. Please note any character minimums or limitations, ensuring that whenever you see the box in this assessment questionnaire, that is your key indicator to highlight those skill sets dramatically throughout your resume because it is most likely the core competencies for that specific vacancy. So if you notice, a key note from this is making sure that when you are going through your resume, you're making sure that when you're going through the vacancy announcement, that you're making sure to read these, clicking on the actual questionnaire, reviewing the questionnaire. Before you even click apply, you should be well versed in what the application is requiring. So that is something to keep note as you're going through the process. So for the next part, we're going to be doing a live demonstration. I am going to stop sharing my screen and then I'm going to be pulling up the search for USA job. Give me 1 second, please. So bear with me as I pull it up. So I'm going to do a generic search with everyone just so that you all get the hang of how to search for HHS careers. So we're going to go to Google. So we are going to Google. As you all see here, I'm going to search USA jobs. And it pops up as usually the first search. And the URL is www.usajobs.gov, right? So the website collects all application material for federal government vacancies. USA Job recently updated their website actually within the past 2 months, adding many new features to explore. So as you scroll down, you'll see various fields being hired for across the federal government. So you'll see that you'll find information about the federal application process and different hiring paths. So it's advisable to click through each hiring path just to kind of get a good understanding of all of the different hiring paths that are open to the public and whoever would like to hire. So just making sure to click through it. And again, as I stated earlier, There is so much information that you can go through and click. I'm just going to kind of demonstrate just to showcase what it is, like what type of information is provided. I know that USA Jobs can seem intimidating, but OPM does a very good job at being very clear and intentional about what they do share. So as you all notice, I went on USA Jobs. It is just on the main page. You scroll down, it says what jobs can you apply for, and then all of these different hiring paths, you click on it, and then you can click each of them, and it can give you a great description of each of the different hiring paths that exist. So overall, these are the different ones. So for this demonstration, we're going to search for jobs within HHS. As I stated before, we are part of the Department of Health and Human Services. So I'm going to click on search. This is how you search for the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. You can start off by actually filling out the Department of Health by clicking Department of Health and Human Services here, if you would like, or the agency, and as well as the department. Or another trick is by going here, and this is where all of the different departments fits within the federal government. And then within this area are the agencies. So for example, one of the agencies that I listed before, the Ministry of Children and Families, right? And then again, Centers for Disease Prevention. So just for clarity, for those who are not well versed in the different ways to search within HHS, this is a specific way that you can search if you aren't sure on which agencies that you're interested in. So for this specific live feature, we're just going to search on the Department of Health and Human Services, just so we can have a clear understanding of all the roles within HHS. We have over 1,423 positions. In a previous webinar, I have communicated that we have over 90,000 employees across the Department of Health and Human Services. So 1,423 jobs is not that bad, okay? So keep that in mind. We are a huge organization and we do have positions posted throughout. So it is important to take note. When you do search through the Department of Health and Human Services, you are going to see that we have, as stated before, a number of agencies, right? So when you search, most of the time it will be the most recent positions or the relevance. So it is good to basically you can sort by close date, open date, agency, department, location, job title, salary, right? So depending on what you are looking for, because IHS, which is Indian Health Services, tends to hire a lot of individuals, there will be a lot more Indian Health Services positions, but just go through and just read through, just making sure that you're taking into consideration all of the different agencies that exist. But depending on how your sorting feature is, that is how you will see the roles and positions that are available. So as I stated, for this demonstration, we'll search for positions within HHS. You can filter positions by criteria such as remote jobs, right? Remote only. So for those who are on the call that are interested in remote roles, so you can state that you are only show remote roles, which would be here, we have 61 position. Great thing about USA Jobs, it does give you the number here of the positions that are available within HHS. And then here, if you are looking for a specific location or an area, you can click exclude remote jobs. Again, here is the handy dandy tool. What does remote mean, right? What does that even mean for those who aren't well versed in that? This is a great way, like I'm just pointing out different tools that can be utilized in the future that can help you explain what remote means. What are you looking for? What does that mean in the federal government? So don't be afraid to click help and just kind of read and research. The more you know, the more you understand about how to apply and different terminologies that the federal government uses, the easier the application process can be for you. So when you are going through, you can filter positions by criteria such as remote jobs, appointment type, and hiring path. Ensure the position is open to the public if you don't meet other hiring paths like veterans, Schedule A, student, recent grad, etc. So when it comes to the hiring paths, we kind of review them a little bit, right? So depending on your hiring path, you can qualify for each of them. So for those who are current students in the federal government, here is a hiring path that you can utilize. Currently, HHS has 8. Recent graduates, 3 students. If you are a veteran, military spouse, National Guard or Reserves, again, I showed in the previous page where you can find additional information, but this is another area where you can also look at to get back to the hiring paths, right? So for the purposes of this, for anyone that is whether you are in the federal government or outside the federal government, it is advisable to click on open to the public, right? If you don't mean any other hiring path. So for example, if I was a student, I would also click students, right? So that will allow me to have 689 position plus 3, okay? If I was a veteran as well as a student, I can also select veterans. So this is sort of like a great way for you to be able to notate that. If you meet several hiring paths, you are free to apply to as many roles that fits under the hiring path that you are eligible for. So again, if you're interested in qualify for any specific hiring path, click on the icons to see the available jobs as demonstrated. The icons on USA Jobs explain who can apply for each role, and many positions have multiple icons. Different grades are stated for each position. So just taking note of that. So for today's example, we'll look at specific position within. Let's see which one we would like to do today. We will look at the position that is open to the public, and we can look at those who are remote. So as you notice, a lot of these states public notice for direct hire, which is another hiring path that can be utilized, right? And for this specific example, since this is going to be closed fairly soon, we're going to use we're going to view the senior statistician position with the National Institute of Health. It is a GS-14, and then we could look at the IT production manager starting at a GS-13. And I'm just going to open these two up just so that we can have a good example of both. So you can apply directly, as you've seen here, right? There's a blue button on both sides where you can apply directly. You can save, you can share, and you can print the vacancy announcement. I recommend printing out the vacancy announcement, sitting down, understanding all components of the vacancy announcement, and using a highlighter to go through it. These vacancy announcements are long and very, very intricate when it comes to what it is that they're looking for, right? As we stated previously, there are several steps that are included in each of the announcements, right? So keep in mind that it's important for you to just sit through and read it and just get acclimated in what it is that you're applying for, because overall it will help you have a good understanding of the application and what it is that you need. So check if the position is currently accepting applications. So as you stated, as you've seen here, this is open. It has a closing date of open date of 0802 and then 0806. So because this blue button is there, it is still accepting application. If it wasn't, it would have stated that it was not, right? So again, paying attention to the open and close date is fairly important. It's crucial to create searches within the USA job feature in order for you to be notified as soon as a new position is posted so you can have your materials prepared in advance. Some positions may close quickly, okay? It's important to notate that. So even though there is an open date and a closing date, some positions have limits on how many applications they're accepting. So it's important to notate that when you're reading through the application process. And if they close within a week, you don't wait until the last minute, because with this position closing today on August 6th, it will close at 11:59. Okay. So a lot of times you may get a notification and you're like, oh, I have time. Let's say it got posted today, right? 080, like let's say today was the posting date of August 6th. And I'm like, oh yeah, I have time. And then I come back, the position's closed or filled because there was a limit of how many individuals could apply for the role. So that is something to keep in mind when applying to roles and when when searching for jobs within USA Jobs, there are a wide variety of different rules and regulations that come into the opening and closing date and how many applicants they are deciding to take. So again, review the salary of the role. Notate that this position is remote. So usually what they do is they have your highest salary within the general pay scale for the public. So for example, since this is a remote role, it will be for the highest GS-14 grade for the GS-14 grade step 1, and then the highest for the GS-14 grade step 10. So what they will do is, because it is remote, it is dependent on where your duty station is. Everyone is not going to be at 139,395. If someone is in Florida, they may not get paid as someone in California. If somebody's in Texas, they're not going to get paid the same as someone who is in Chicago. So please keep in mind that your salary is based on the location in which you are working in, not the location where your agency is located. Okay? So keep that in mind. So again, reviewing the salary, the pay scale, the GS level, which is a GS-14, the location of the role, one vacancy announcement anywhere in the United States for this specific job, the duties, requirement, and promotional potential. So this position here has a promotional potential to a 14, right? So keeping that in mind when reviewing. So that means that if an individual is interested in this role, they will be hired at a 14 and they will only move up to a 14 grade level, right? It does not offer the promotional potential to move up. So it's important to understand the promotional potential because a GS level position might allow promotions up to a higher GS level. So for those who've noticed that there are positions that may be posted like at a GS-9 to a 12 or GS-9 to a 13, it could be where it states GS-9 and then the promotional potential 13. That means that it has the potential to go to a 13. So just keep that in mind when reviewing your resume. When reviewing the vacancy announcement, it's important to understand that this promotional potential allows you to move up throughout the pay scale every year once deemed qualified by your supervisor. So you don't have to compete for the position or apply for that promotion every time. As long as you meet the requirements and you're able to demonstrate the experience, you can move up throughout each year within your specific position. And keep in mind that it depends on the hiring manager and it depends on your supervisor with the way in which within their agency, how they move through the system. So another key tip is going into OPM and searching the rules and regulations surrounding pay scale and grade promotions, and that will provide you additional information on how to move through the process. So the job series and qualifications are also listed. As stated before, when I was talking about the job series, this is a 1530 statistics position. So this is the job series and the job family. So all the positions within the federal government are within a specific family. So for this specific position is a 1530 statistics position. And take note in the control number. So at the bottom here, where it says the control number, this is the number that the actual vacancy announcement is on. And then this is the announcement number. So let's say you want to find out, you want to scroll down and you want to reach out to Michelle Davis and find out information at the NIH individual on this position. You will send an email, again, as we stated, at least 4 weeks after applying that, hey, I applied to announcement number NIH, NIA, DH 24, so on and so forth. My name is so-and-so, and I just wanted to know the status of the position. So this is basically the announcement number that you can utilize to communicate your application. Understand how you will be evaluated, including evaluation buckets. So it is very important to notate that you're going to be evaluated as best qualified, well qualified, and qualified. So for just kind of going through a going through a vacancy announcement, you have the name as stated before, the Department of Health and Human Services. This is a position that is located in the National Institute of Health, right? This is the summary of the position where it kind of goes through and explains to you a little bit about the position and what they're looking for in the incumbent. And the summaries are different within each each individual vacancy announcement. So here, as you can see, when we look at the IT program manager at the Department of Health and Human Services, and then if you notate the difference with the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services. So as I stated before, throughout USA Jobs, you're going to notate that you can click a lot and it can give you even further information on it, especially if you're not aware or you understand. And then for CMS, which is the acronym, it even goes a little bit deeper and actually communicates to you the office this position is located in within CMS. So it's the digital services at CMS. So again, as I stated before, making sure to have a good understanding of the vacancy announcement, understanding of where the job is located, what they're looking for. Now, this job is open to the public for the statistician position. For the IT product manager, this job is open to career transitional and the public. So this job is open to two different audiences, right? And then for this specific position vacancy announcement, it has a video to explain a little bit about CMS and what you are going to get when you join. Like, well, why join us? More information about the agency. Depending on the vacancy announcement and the organization, they may give you additional information. So take note on the duties, right? Making sure to read through, as we talked about before. We talked about the duties that are submitted throughout each vacancy announcement, the requirements, conditions of employment, right? Qualifications. So we talked a little bit about the qualifications earlier, how it says in order to qualify for this role at a GS 14, you must meet, right? You must have the level of experience at a GS 13 in order to communicate that you have the ability to have that, to be able to be deemed as qualified for the 14, right? So 1 year of specialized experience equivalent to a GS 13 obtained in either the private public sector that include the following responsibilities, right? So just making sure to keep note of that when you are looking. So as you see with the qualifications, they're not all written the same. That's one of the reasons why we state to always print and read through, because it will provide you additional information in what it is that the individual position is looking for. So the education, this job does not have an educational qualifications requirement, right? Now, for the statistician position, which is a little bit unique, this position has an educational requirement. You are strongly encouraged to submit a copy of your transcript, right? So keeping in mind that this role does have an educational requirement and is an anomaly from a high grade position having a requirement with a high grade level role for a 14, right? But it doesn't require a specific degree. It requires 15 hours at least in the statistics realm, right? So just kind of keeping through and looking through and just making sure that you are reading through and you're able to showcase your experience for each individual area, right? So now when it states the how you will be evaluated, this is the section where you're going to go through and read through what are the evaluation criterias, right? So for example, with this one just gives you the generic information that just kind of communicate the CTAP, ICTAP information, and then the other role communicates you will have a resume review, practical assessment, qualifying phone interviews, ranking and preferences, future consideration. So each vacancy announcement, the reason why I'm showing both is just to show you how all vacancy announcements are not created equal. So that is a great reason why it is important to print and read, okay? So now when it comes to required documents, they will always be specific with what they are looking for. Again, to ensure that all essential information in your resume, we encourage you use the USA Jobs online resume builder that I talked about earlier. If you choose to use your own resume, you must ensure it contains all of the required information and you organize it so we can associate the following information for each experience position. So job title, name of employer, beginning and ending dates of employment, hours worked per week, detailed description of job duties, accomplishments, related skills, series and grade. So just kind of going through, I know it's cumbersome because I know it is easy to just apply, click apply, 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 apply. Trust me, the reason why a lot of times individuals are not referred or that they do not get the opportunity to interview for a role is because a lot of times you're either not providing enough information when you're applying to within USA Jobs, or you're just disqualifying yourselves just in the basis of how you submit your application. So again, making sure that you read through and you have a good understanding of what it is that you are submitting. And a lot of times you actually have the opportunity to view the questionnaire before you click apply. So just read through the questionnaire, get a well-versed of information on how to, what it is that they're asking for, so that before you click apply, you actually do possess the necessary skill sets, right? So just keep in mind that it's important to review. I can't say that enough, right? And then going through the application process. Most of the questionnaires, it exists in the how to apply sections, and then others can exist in the next step section. So it just kind of depending on how they are communicating the information. And for example, for this specific role, it goes even in further detail of what are the individualized steps that it would take to be considered qualified for the role. Like, what are the steps for the application? So it stated a written assignment, interview, hiring managers interview with qualifying applicants. So just kind of take your time reading through and just having a good understanding of the process. So if we go down a bit more, this also communicates the next steps of for this role, critical preparedness and response mission, right? So like they are definitely looking for someone that will be able to sign up for the federal civilian detailees. So it's just kind of like having a great understanding of things. But overall, understanding, as I stated, your buckets of evaluation: best qualified, well qualified, and qualified. You will be evaluated based on the specific competencies. The assessment questionnaire and required documents are listed. As I stated, required documents may include your resume, college transcripts if applicable. And then again, following the how to apply section, note the agency contact information for follow-ups, as I use the example of Michelle Davis. And then once you submit your application, follow up using this contact. I know that one of the main pressing questions that people always ask us when we attend career fairs, job fairs, host webinars: I applied to this position and I have not heard back. I've applied to this position and I was stated that the hiring manager put me on the list to be considered for an interview, or I was made qualified for it. Please, 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 the agency contact information is listed in all job announcement. If it is not listed on the job announcement, and you can go and you can search for a similar role within that agency, you can reach out to that contact and ask them about the vacancy. So just utilize the information that's on it, because unfortunately, as I stated, it is a huge organization. HHS is a huge organization. We have so many employees, so many agencies, and so many HR offices that I implore each and every one of you all to basically make sure to reach out and find out the status of your application, right? Ensure you read and sort through all relevant information carefully. And overall, that's a brief overview of USA Jobs. And again, we do have a question and answer part of this presentation. And so if you do have questions on this specific area, please make sure to write it down so that you guys will be able to ask questions on it. So I'm going to stop sharing again and continue with the rest of our presentation. Give me 1 second, please. Okay, now we are at the Federal Resume Writing 101 section. We're going to now discuss how to craft a federal resume. So as we kind of demonstrated in the USA Jobs profile, how I communicated that there are so many different areas that you can have additional resources, ask questions, request more information about like different terminologies that are within USA Jobs. USA Jobs actually has a help center and additional resources area. So overall, I went over what you need to include in your resume when we kind of went through and looked at the previous slides before. So here is a screenshot of additional resources available within USA Jobs under the related article sections. Before you start your application, make sure, again, I know I'm repeating, but it's very important. Use the vacancy announcement as a guide. Review the duties and qualification section to ensure that you meet the requirements. Understand the how to apply section to gather all necessary documents and follow the correct application process. Check the how you will be evaluated section to know what competencies and qualifications are being assessed. Assess the relevance of your experience, education, and training certificates in relation to the vacancy announcement you are applying to. These steps will help you tailor your application effectively and increase your chances of success. So what I'm going to go through now is I'm going to go through different examples. So as I know, there's a lot of information on the slides in the preceding slides that are going to be coming afterwards. So take note, right, of the left and the right. Okay, so we're going to do examples of minimum qualifications. And to the left, you will see a lot of text, which might seem overwhelming. Don't worry, you don't need to focus on all of it for this presentation. Instead, focus on how I've translated into a resume. So the resume is to your right, right? The text on the left outlines the minimum qualifications for positions, while the right slide shows how to incorporate the information into your resume. So for this GS7 position, you need at least 1 year of specialized experience. This includes collecting information for studies and surveys and assisting in preparing reports, right? So note, collecting information that will be used to conduct studies, assisting in preparing reports of findings related to data analysis. Take notes of collecting and take notes of assisting, right? Why? Because those are the key action verbs that are used to notate the differences between one grade level over the other, right? So for instance, if you have 1 year's full of experience as a part-time worker since June 2022, this equates to a full year experience qualifying you for the position. Demonstrate that you've collected information and conduct literature reviews, categorizing 13 articles to assist with survey design and preparing reports. A key tip, as you notice, is to include action duration and population for each employer, what you did, who you worked with, and how long you've been performing that skill. So I'm going to demonstrate this same example for the GS7 all the way to a GS13. So you can see changes in language and technical difficulty regardless of your professional experience, and you can tailor your resume to reflect these qualifications. So just kind of leaving it on here for a little bit since we did kind of go through it, right? So if you notice where it states, so the information that is from the vacancy announcement, we found a way to put it within what is it that I've done? How have I assisted? You see the action verb assisted 3 students, right? Prepared and published, right? Those are the ways that you can actually signify your experience within your resume. So for this example of minimum qualification for GS9, you need at least 1 years of experience at the GS7 level, utilizing surveys, market research, or statistical techniques, and assisting in preparing draft policies. Therefore, you can see what has been taken on the left and incorporated on the right. A key tip is to translate your experience into quantifiable matrix. Don't assume that we can interpret the size and scope of your experience. Use specific platforms and end results, numbers, and matrices. For example, conducting market research, design analytical survey tools, and using statistical analysis tools should be clearly stated. Use action verbs to demonstrate technical skills and critical competencies required for the job. Avoid making up numbers and facts, repetition, and copy and pasting language from the job announcement. So remember, that's a tip that I stated before. So pinpointing the different areas where it is important, right? So for this, utilizing survey market research, right? Utilizing. So before you research, now you're utilizing the survey information, right? Assisting with preparing draft operational or program policies. So before you may have just been assisting, now you're assisting in preparing the drafting of the articles. So those are just kind of key notes to pinpoint when you're looking at the action verbs. So for this example of minimum qualification of a GS-11, you need to have a full year's experience at a GS-9 level and successfully perform duties related to initiating, administrating, and closing out contracts and research grants. So for this, right, where we're looking at the KSI, successfully performing the duties of the position, including experience in initiating, administration, or closeout, right? So administering, initiating. So being specific with the action verbs, okay? So now for this key tip, you have select strong action verbs to demonstrate your technical skills and critical competencies required for the job. Avoid repetition in using language directly from the job announcement, right? Example, assisted with the submission at 23 federally funded research grants, including initial research design and the full grant timeline. Acted as a liaison between employers and supervisors supporting the development, negotiation, and monitoring of grant deliverables, right? So these are different examples of how you can utilize some of the action verbs to be able to communicate your experiences to within what you've done and what they're asking for. As we stated before, like as I've stated before, an HR specialist is who reviews your resume. A lot of times they're not subject matter expert in the information, like in the actual position in the vacancy announcement. So it's important for you to be very clear and intentional when you are communicating your experiences, especially for those who may have like a high level technical position that you're applying for. You don't want to just assume that, oh, I'm using all of these abbreviations within my resume. Oh, the hiring manager is going to know what I'm talking about. A lot of times it's not the hiring manager that's going to read your resume first. It's going to be an HR specialist. So if that HR specialist is not well versed in the actual position or in the actual terminologies that are used within the department, it's important for you to spell it out and being very clear and intentional with what it is that you input within your resume. So for the next example of minimum qualifications at a GS-12, for this GS-12 level, you need to have 1 full years of experience at a GS-11 level. This includes specialized experience in managing and assisting with contracts, grant cooperative agreements, pre and post award administration, and closeout activities. Example, this position involves research proposal submission, grant acceptance, and awarding funding, right? So key tip, be creative and exhaustive in demonstrating your competencies. The federal government does not have a 1-page limit, okay? So there is no 1-page limit like the private sector. We need to know in great detail what it is that you have done to demonstrate that skill set, right? So feel free to be as detailed as you want, exhaustive as you want, making sure to highlight key accomplishments or achievements that match the specialized experience mentioned in the vacancy announcement. And again, I know this is long, but thank you for bearing with me as I rush through the technical part of this. You'll have access to these slides after the presentations so that you can review the detailed information at your own pace. So now for the GS-13, right, for the minimum qualifications, for the GS-13 level, you need to have, again, repeating, 1 full years of experience at the GS-12. This level requires a very specialized skill set, including developing programs and policies related to professional development, analyzing reports to track workforce capability and development needs, creating marketing and communication materials, including using platforms like SharePoint to increase awareness and use of development resources. So another key tip, include software platform in your resume to demonstrate proficiency in technical skills and platforms. For example, with this specific, for this specific resume, STA, Power BI, Tableau, SharePoint were all listed, right? It's essential to not only state what you did, but also to include specific metrics to show your impact and result, okay? So an example of accomplishments could be develop an innovative continuing education certificate program for 150 employees to address workforce apathy, resulting in a 35 increase in employee personal development plan submission. Design a workforce training dashboard using Tableau to provide analytical data and status reports. Created an online database of over 100 digital media assets via a SharePoint to store marketing materials, resulting in direct increase in awareness, use, and capacity of professional resources. So as you see, it says creating marketing communication materials presentation, SharePoint sites that increases awareness. So you see how that is directly communicated as how many 100 digital media assets, right? Being specific by using matrices and data. So now for the education, right? Highlight your education. So again, since it's not a requirement in all the job posting, however, it is very important. This detailed example of a comprehensive view of how to illustrate educational background and demonstrate qualifications for the position. So a lot of times there are students who may or may not have have work experience, and they want to utilize their educational experience to highlight the skill sets that they have and all of that they have done throughout their educational pursuits. So it's important to highlight your educational effectively on your resume. If you have earned a bachelor, master's, a PhD, make sure to include your educational background, relevant coursework, and projects. So for example, for the degree listing, list your degree before your university to clearly state what type of degree you have, especially if it is required for specific positions such as health science, data analytics, data science, accounting, or economics. Coursework. Include specific coursework that is relevant to the position. For example, if the job requires a specific field of study or coursework, make sure to list the relevant courses. This can be verified with your transcript, but it's helpful to include it directly on your resume as well. This individual this individual pursued a Master's of Public Health from the University of Chapel Hill. Relevant coursework include data analytics, developing and implementing public health systems, thinking and design, and advanced health policy and advocacy. So for this specific one, when it comes to the projects and publication, based on the courses, including a specific project such as capstone projects or any significant assignments. If you have any publications, feel free to include those as well. So just trying to make sure to be as clear as possible when you are communicating your educational experiences. So building or uploading a resume into your profile. This is a screenshot of the document uploaded section on your USA Job. When you upload your resume, just making sure that you click on resume up at the top, you'll see the option to upload up to 5 resumes when completing your application. So keeping note that for for this specific resume upload, there are 5 when completing your application. Select the most relevant and recent resume. Make sure each resume has a proper title to identify it easily. So for example, a lot of times when you're applying to USA Jobs, you may be applying to several positions, right? You may be applying to several series or several verses of roles. So a lot of candidates, they may have a resume for scientists, a resume for a public health individual. So that's the reason why USA Jobs allows you to have up to 5 resumes. And the key thing is tailoring your resume. We recommend tailoring your resume for every job you apply for. You can have a master's resume that includes all your competencies and experiences. However, to be the most competitive candidate, make sure to tailor your resume to match the specific job requirements. So additional documents are going to be posted where it states other. You see at the top where it says other. You have a section to upload up to 10 additional documents, including transcripts, supporting documents, veterans documents, Schedule A, disability documentation, and SF-50 if you are a current federal employee. Any required documents listed in the job announcement can be stored here. Submitting your application is the last step. So after you upload your documents, you'll go to the host site for the agency you're applying to. There you will select the specific documents to formally submit your application. So again, make sure, as we stated earlier on, and as well as the video, make sure your resume is searchable. This is where you'll find options to either upload a PDF resume or build one using USA Jobs. Remember not to include personal identifying information, such as your social security number, photo of yourself or any other personal details. I know some individuals are used to putting pictures on their resume or just providing some specific details. Again, with the federal government, as stated here, making sure not to include those things because biases, that is something that the federal government does not makes sure to avoid. So that's something that we just want to make sure that everyone is aware that there are certain things that should not be included within your resume. So when it comes to resume options, you can choose to upload your own resume or use USA Jobs Resume Builder if you haven't created a federal resume before. We strongly recommend using the Resume Builder. It provides a structured format that aligns with the federal requirements. There is assistance with formatting within USA Jobs, so it offers plenty of resources to help you format your resume correctly, and these tools can guide you through the process. Again, no PII, right? Ensuring your resume does not include personal information. And then again, the resource availability. USA Jobs has numerous resources available to assist you in creating and formatting your resume. Take advantage of it. There is so many tools and tricks as stated. What should I include in my resume? How to make your resume and profile searchable. So with here, adding work experience, here's a screenshot of a section from the resume builder for documenting your work experience. This is where you add your work experience. It is crucial to include your average hours per week, as this helps demonstrate the amount of full-time work experience you have. For instance, 40 hours per week for 365 days qualifies as a full year of experience at a given grade level. So if you have, for instance, 20 hours per week and you're working as a student worker, right? For only 6 months, right? Whereas 40 hours per week for 12 months is credited as 1 year. So keep in mind that if you only work 20 hours for 1 year, that's 6 months. But if you work 40 hours for 12 months, that is credited as a full year. So when you're looking at, when I say a year's worth of experience in that specific grade level, that means that you have worked a 40-hour 1 year experience in that grade level. So including this information ensures that your work experience is accurately reflected and meets the necessary qualifications. So last but not least, resume examples. This is an example of a federal resume that wasn't built on USA Job, but incorporates many of the competencies and key elements we recommended, including this resume effectively showcasing the key tips discussed early in this session. It demonstrates detailed description of duties and accomplishments, specific matrices and achievements, use of strong action verbs, inclusion of relevant technical skills and platform, documentation of work experience with average hours per week. By following these guidelines, your resume will be more competitive and aligned with federal requirements. I know this is a little bit small and blurry, but whenever you all do get a copy of the presentation, that will provide you with the opportunity to look through it, to be able to understand like what are the different requirements and how you will be able to tailor your resume to provide the needed information in order to be competitive. So we are moving on to the question and answer section. So we're going to be opening up the question and answer box, answer a few of your submitted questions before we take it to a closing. Thank you all so much for taking time to hear the end to the end of the presentation. So first question is Cullen Hazelby. How are years of specialized experience evaluated when relevant work experience qualifies for some but not all of the listed criteria? For example, an announcement lists 5 items: analyze data, written comms or oral comms, led a team, prepare budget, and your prior experience includes 4 of them, right? So when it comes to specialized experience evaluated when relevant work experience qualifies for some, it means that you're able to demonstrate those 5 competencies within your resume, right? So you would need to be able to state that you have been able to analyze written communications, oral communications, and prepare budgets. So a lot of times it's just kind of like thinking outside of the box on how to orchestrate what it is that you have done, right? So if there are areas where you have had more experience in, it will be best to kind of like focus on those areas. And then maybe if you have any trainings that you've done to prepare budgets or just learn how to prepare budgets, trying to do that as well. Cullen, I hope I'm saying your name correctly. So then, Mr. Howard or Mrs. Howard, the assessment box within the questionnaire, should they be in order based on each question, or should we indicate which employer matched with each question? E3, ABC, job 1222, 123. Also, should we include our address, or is city and state sufficient for the resume? So I know within USA Jobs, it does ask for your address on there. You can include both, but for some resumes, if you're utilizing your own resumes, city and state is sufficient. However, because the federal government does request for additional like information when it comes to address, they may request it later on. So when it comes to yes, it should be in order based on each question, because it should be in order based on chronological order, based on the dates that you have had held the roles. That way, just to make it easier, so that when they're looking through your resume and trying to figure out how does each individual thing match. So based off putting in order based on the question, but then as well as based off of where within your resume it is. That would be how I would basically organize it. So Gloria stated, why are some positions posted only for a few days while some are posted for longer periods? So it depends on the hiring manager. So for example, as I stated before, there is a large number of individuals that apply to positions within the federal government. So because there is a lot of times, if it's a high demand role, especially remote roles have a shorter time span, that is the reason why they try to close them as quickly as possible, because if they're going to have 5,000 candidates that apply, that means one person is going to be reviewing 5,000 candidates. It helps on the end on the HR specialist to not be overwhelmed, and as well as just provide an equal opportunity for individuals to be held, like to be able to qualify. But there is a minimum amount of time a position needs to be posted for, and a minimum amount of and as well as a minimum of applications that can be received in order for them to be able to move forward with closing the role. So just keep that in mind. That's the reason why. So another one from a question from Sherry is, I'm a contractor for a government agency. How would I reflect the information? Meaning, if I place the contracting company as an employer, how do I reflect the agency? So a lot of times, one of the things that I do is I tell people, like, just basically post the name of the organization that you stated, like you were contracting. And then at the bottom, maybe in the second row or in parentheses, you can put the actual like agency that you work for, right? Another thing is that sometimes if you work for like contracting organizations, you can place like the contracting name, and then let's say, for example, like let's say you work for ABC Contracting, right? You had an experience with the Department of Health and Human Services. You can put the Department of Health and Human Services and then put your responsibilities under it. You may have had another position with the DoD, Department of Defense, list your experiences under it. So you can actually make your, I guess, the larger name as the contracting, but the smaller name as the agencies that you supported. So Josh you asked to put detail in the educational section, and says instead, can you include your education at a job in your experiences section and put the relevant information there? So I would say yes for some positions. So that is something that you can do, because it depends on, like, everybody has their own individual circumstances. So depending on your circumstances, if you are a student and that is the only way that you showcase like what type of roles that you've done in your experience, yes, that is something that you can do, because some organizations look at you being a student as also attaining your experiences, your work experience as well. So with your experience as a graduate statistic researcher, yes, that would be considered a role that you did obtain, especially if you are able to utilize your professor as a like, a stand-in as a supervisor. So Jared, is it worth putting in a summary bio? So if you are doing your individualized resume where it's outside of USA Jobs, outside of the creating the resume feature, yes, it is worth putting a summary in bio. However, if you're building it within USA Jobs, there isn't necessarily a section for that at the top. However, at the bottom, there is like an area where you can put relevant experience or provide more information on summary and bio. So Emily stated, roughly how many applications are forwarded to hiring managers? So I am not sure if there's a specific number. However, it is based on qualifications. You remember we talked about the different buckets that people fall under. So they do kind of order it based on how you fall into those different buckets. So it can range from 100, but I'm not 100% sure of that specific question. What I would implore you to do is write the actual the actual HR specialist or the contact information at the bottom of that vacancy announcement. And you can pose that question as well, because it may vary, but overall, I think it just depends on the amount of individuals that apply and those who are deemed qualified. So Sonia says, thank you very much. I have a Schedule A letter in form. When applying, I must upload required documents. My question is, do I upload both the letter for my doctor and the form, or do I only upload the letter from my doctor? I have searched USA Jobs for the answer to this question, but cannot find it. So the only thing that I would highly suggest is you would be able to upload both if you are not sure, right? Another thing is I would just be careful that your note from your doctor does not state any detail of your Schedule A reason, just so that you do not have any issues moving forward when it comes to like providing too much information, because some of that does fall under the PII, and just making sure that that information, so just kind of clearly read if your doctor note is stating more information, just make sure that you don't include that letter. But there is information on what to include on Schedule A, but this is another question that could be asked within the actual vacancy announcement. Sonia, I hope that was helpful. And then it is 4:25. I'm going to answer about 3 more questions and then just provide, unfortunately, I'm not able to get through all the questions, but I hope that some of the answers that I am providing is helpful. So Diana, is there a resource for a pay bands AG of the CURSE Act? So yes, there are. What I would say for the Cures Act, what I would say is that if you Google pay bands AG of the Cures Act and put OPM, you should be able to pull it up. As I stated, a lot of this information is active in for the public's view. It is a little bit tricky at times to find pay bands outside of the GS pay scale, but it does exist within the global web. So Katrina stated, for those that are not current federal employees but have a master's in 10 to 20 years of experience, what is the best way to navigate, stand out, and prepare for the career transition in the federal government? So overall, it's basically the same process as I stated before, just making sure to look at the position, reading the vacancy announcement. And if you have a master's degree and 10 to 20 years of experience, just making sure that you're applying to roles and jobs that fit within your actual experience. So like a lot of times it's that, so I know that we as individuals feel like we're unique. A lot of times there are so many individuals that are in the same bucket as us, right? So a lot of times it's just reading through and just making sure that as long as you tailor your resume based on the role and position that you're trying to obtain, that will make you stand out overall. If you can talk to your skills and how you were able to apply your master's degrees to your 10 to 20 years of experience, that will make you stand out overall. So it is 4:27. We do have just a few more slides to go. And I do want to say thank you all so much for submitting your questions. Unfortunately, I wish I was able to get through all of them. I do not have the opportunity to, but I think moving forward, there may be a section where maybe I can host another webinar where it will just be question and answers. That way, everyone will get a chance to get most of their questions answered. So I do want to say thank you all so much for taking your time to submit your questions and just attending the webinar to its entirety. So I just want to connect with our team. So again, thank you for submitting your questions. Again, we cannot go through them all. I'm just stating it again because I did see a few other people join. If you have additional questions, you can reach out to our team by sending an email to HHS@HHS.gov. We can basically utilize that platform to also answer questions. Please, 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 I stated early in the presentation, refrain from sending any HR-related inquiries. If you are interested in finding out anything about your status or what is the next steps of the application process, there is a contact information on the vacancy announcement. We do not have access to provide that information, unfortunately. We would love to, but unfortunately, we do have limitations within our roles. Be sure to follow us on social media by LinkedIn and Handshake if you are a current student. Register for our upcoming events at HHS Careers, and just basically just taking time to search our pages and just follow us. And we do attend career fairs. So just if you do have time and you want to stop by a booth and ask questions, I am joined by a plethora of individuals on our team. So just to kind of give you an opportunity to even find another opportunity to ask questions. And then finally, again, we want to thank you all for joining us for today's webinar, Navigating the Federal Application Process within HHS Careers. With HHS Careers, we look forward to seeing you at our future programming. As a reminder, this event was recorded. You will have this recording sent to you in a copy of the PDF, copy of the slides, with live links to resources. Please remember to fill out our brief survey evaluating today's presentation. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon. It is 4:30, and best of luck as you explore your next career with the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
Produced by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.